Imagine a seemingly ordinary family, living a quiet life in a peaceful community. Now imagine a secret, lurking beneath the surface, that shatters that tranquility and leads to an unimaginable disappearance. This is a story that forces us to confront the hidden lives people lead and the devastating consequences when those secrets are uncovered. It begins on what should have been a celebratory long weekend, a time for family and relaxation, but it quickly transformed into a chilling mystery. The setting was Holtville, Alabama, a small town where life often unfolded with a predictable rhythm. It was Memorial Day weekend, a time when many families enjoyed the unofficial start of summer. At the heart of this seemingly idyllic scene was the Osborne family. Susan Osborne, a mother, and her 15-year-old son, Evan Chartrand, were preparing for a fishing trip, a common pastime for many families in the area. Susan was married to Jerry Osborne, an Air Force veteran. On the surface, they appeared to be a happy and stable family unit, their lives interwoven with the fabric of their community. Their home in Holtville was a picture of suburban calm, a place where everyday moments unfolded. However, this outward appearance of normalcy turned dark, swiftly and without warning. After what was supposed to be a simple fishing trip, Susan and Evan vanished. They simply disappeared, leaving behind a profound sense of unease. As days turned into weeks, their absence became alarming, deeply concerning to those who knew them best. Friends and family began to express deep concern, their initial bewilderment giving way to a gnawing suspicion. The nature of their vanishing, without a trace or any clear indication of where they had gone, immediately led law enforcement to suspect foul play. This was not merely a case of someone leaving. It felt deliberate, ominous, and inherently wrong. The details of their last known movements and the sudden silence that followed painted a grim picture, signaling that something far more sinister than a simple departure had occurred. The absence of a farewell, the lack of any communication, all pointed to an unsettling void where a loving mother and her teenage son once were. As the days of their disappearance stretched into weeks, attention began to focus on the one person who remained, Jerry Osborne. The narrative moves to the escalating suspicion around Jerry, fueled by his unusual behavior and a story that seemed to defy logic. Jerry's account of their disappearance was delivered with a composure that struck many as unsettling, given the gravity of the situation. He claimed that Susan had left voluntarily with an unidentified man on Memorial Day. According to his version of events, she took Evan with her, and then, inexplicably, she returned the next day to collect belongings. This narrative painted a picture of a spontaneous departure, perhaps an elopement or a sudden decision to leave, but it lacked crucial details and felt inconsistent with Susan's known character and her close bond with her son. The story felt too neat, too convenient, and did not align with the immediate concerns of those who knew Susan best. However, key pieces of evidence immediately contradicted Jerry's claims, raising serious red flags for investigators. Susan's car, a crucial indicator of her personal mobility, remained in the driveway. If she had left voluntarily, especially to start a new life or collect belongings, it was highly improbable she would leave her vehicle behind. This detail immediately undermined Jerry's story of a planned departure. Furthermore, the most glaring omission was Jerry's own behavior following their supposed departure. Despite his claim that they had left, no call had been placed to report them missing by Jerry himself. It was friends and family who initiated the search and eventually contacted authorities, highlighting a significant and alarming delay in reporting. This lack of urgency or concern from a husband and stepfather whose wife and son had supposedly left under such unusual circumstances further solidified law enforcement's growing suspicion. These immediate inconsistencies in Jerry's story, coupled with his inaction, began to paint a disturbing portrait, turning a simple missing persons case into a potential criminal investigation with a clear person of interest. As law enforcement's suspicions about Jerry Osborne intensified, his actions following the disappearance of Susan and Evan began to paint an increasingly disturbing picture, moving beyond mere inconsistencies to overt, highly suspicious behavior. Instead of actively searching for his missing family or expressing profound distress, Jerry embarked on a series of activities that indicated a deliberate attempt to alter the environment within their home, as if trying to erase something. This phase of the narrative centers on the cleanup and remodel actions that, in hindsight, would be viewed as critical pieces of circumstantial evidence. Jerry's immediate behavior was startling in its focus on domestic transformation. Shortly after Susan and Evan vanished, he began a massive home renovation project. This wasn't a gradual undertaking or a pre-planned improvement. It was an urgent, extensive, and somewhat frantic effort to change the interior of the house. He started by painting walls, applying fresh coats of paint in various rooms, seemingly eager to cover existing surfaces. This act, while outwardly benign, raised questions about the timing and necessity. Why such a sudden and thorough redecoration at a time when his wife and son were missing? The painting wasn't superficial. It was a comprehensive effort, suggesting a desire to obscure or refresh large areas. Beyond just paint, his renovation efforts became far more invasive. Jerry began ripping up carpets, systematically removing the flooring throughout significant portions of the house. This was a laborious task, indicative of a deep clean or a desire to replace old materials entirely. Following the removal of carpets, he proceeded to replace flooring with new materials. This extensive renovation, touching fundamental aspects of the home's interior, consumed a significant amount of his time and resources. Such a large-scale remodeling project, undertaken immediately after a baffling disappearance, was inherently suspicious, suggesting a motive beyond simple home improvement. It pointed towards an effort to sanitize or neutralize a space that might hold secrets. Perhaps the most alarming of Jerry's actions involved the disposal of old furniture and other materials. Instead of conventional disposal methods, he resorted to disposing of old furniture in backyard burns. Neighbors began to observe and later recall these activities. These were not small, contained bonfires. Witnesses recall large fires, often burning continuously over several days. The fires generated not only significant heat and light, but also foul odors that permeated the neighborhood and heavy smoke that lingered in the air. These were not the typical smells of burning leaves or yard waste. The odors were unusual, described as acrid or chemical, raising immediate concerns among those who lived nearby. The duration and intensity of these fires, along with the unsettling smells they produced, made them memorable and highly suspicious events. Neighbors might have initially dismissed them as odd, but in the context of the subsequent investigation, these backyard burns became crucial indicators of Jerry's efforts to eliminate or destroy physical objects, potentially evidence related to the disappearance. The combination of interior renovation and the extensive outdoor burning suggested a methodical and comprehensive attempt to erase any traces of what might have occurred within the Holtville home. This behavior, so incongruous with the actions expected of a distressed husband and stepfather, solidified the growing suspicion that Jerry Osborne knew far more about Susan and Evan's vanishing than he was revealing. As Jerry Osborne's suspicious behavior continued, marked by his extensive home renovations and the unsettling backyard fires, law enforcement's focus on him intensified. The passage of time without any word from Susan or Evan only deepened the mystery and amplified the urgency for official action. This section delves into the critical timeline gaps that solidified suspicion and the initial, crucial steps taken by investigators to uncover the truth. One of the most perplexing and alarming aspects of the case was the significant timeline gap between the disappearance and any formal police involvement. Susan and Evan had been missing for approximately 60 days before a formal report was made. This extended period of silence, almost 2 months, was highly unusual for a mother and son, especially one as young as Evan, who had simply vanished without a trace. In most missing persons cases, friends or family typically file a report within days, if not hours, of an unexplained absence. For Jerry, the husband and stepfather, to wait such a prolonged period before alerting authorities was a major red flag, immediately raising suspicions about his involvement or knowledge of their whereabouts. This 2-month delay allowed a considerable amount of time for any immediate evidence to be tampered with, cleaned, or destroyed, making the initial stages of the investigation significantly more challenging. The absence of a swift, concerned report from Jerry himself only served to deepen the investigators' belief that he was withholding crucial information or actively concealing something. This lengthy gap underscored a deliberate effort to manage the situation without official scrutiny, a behavior highly incongruent with that of an innocent, distraught family member. Given the mounting circumstantial evidence, Jerry's odd behavior, and the alarming timeline gap, law enforcement determined that a more invasive examination of the Holtville residence was necessary. The logical action for them was to obtain a search warrant. This legal instrument allowed investigators to thoroughly examine the property, collect forensic evidence, and directly address the suspicions raised by Jerry's conduct. It marked a pivotal shift from a missing persons inquiry to a focused criminal investigation. The process of securing the warrant itself would have involved presenting compelling arguments to a judge, outlining the inconsistencies in Jerry's story, the unexplained renovation activities, and the long delay in reporting the disappearance. The issuance of the warrant signaled that the authorities now had a legal basis to treat the residence as a potential crime scene. Upon gaining legal entry, investigators deployed a highly specialized and critical tool, luminol testing. This chemical compound is designed to detect the presence of blood, even if it has been thoroughly cleaned or is no longer visible to the naked eye. The results were immediate and alarming, providing the first tangible scientific indicators of potential violence within the home. Luminol testing revealed approximately 20 suspected blood spots in key areas throughout the house. These were not random or isolated occurrences. The presence of suspected blood was concentrated in specific, highly significant locations. The kitchen, a central gathering space where everyday activities occur. The laundry room, a place often associated with cleaning up messes, and a bathroom, another common site for personal hygiene and potential cleanup efforts. The distribution of these suspected blood spots across multiple rooms, particularly in areas associated with cleaning and daily life, strongly suggested a struggle, an injury, or even a violent event followed by a deliberate and extensive cleanup attempt. The sheer number of suspected spots, combined with their strategic locations, pointed towards something far more sinister than an accidental injury. This evidence directly contradicted Jerry's narrative of a peaceful departure and provided a powerful, silent testimony to a violent event that likely occurred within those walls. The luminol findings transformed the case from one of mere suspicion into one with compelling forensic indications of a crime. With luminol testing revealing alarming indications of blood within the Holtville residence, the investigation intensified, prompting law enforcement to delve deeper into the digital and physical realms surrounding Jerry Osborne. The focus shifted to electronic evidence and the specialized capabilities of K9 units, searching for irrefutable proof to corroborate the forensic findings and Jerry's increasingly suspicious behavior. One of the most immediate points of inquiry for modern investigations is digital surveillance. The home security system became a critical area of interest for detectives. Security cameras, commonly installed for protection, often provide invaluable chronological evidence. However, upon attempting to access these crucial recordings, investigators discovered a significant breach. The video footage from the home's security system had been deleted. This erasure was not accidental. It indicated a deliberate and knowing act to remove potentially incriminating evidence. The deletion of such critical data, especially from a system designed to record continuous activity, immediately raised a major red flag, pointing directly to an attempt at concealment. Furthermore, adding another layer of suspicion, it was discovered that Jerry had replaced the cameras after the disappearance. This action, undertaken post-disappearance and prior to any formal police report by him, underscored a calculated effort to control the narrative and eliminate any visual record of the events that transpired during the critical period when Susan and Evan vanished. The combination of deleted footage and replaced cameras was highly incriminating, suggesting a conscious effort to obstruct justice and hide what truly happened within the residence. This digital tampering provided a clear indication of a guilty mind attempting to cover its tracks. Parallel to the examination of digital evidence, the investigation employed a specialized and highly effective tool for locating human remains: cadaver dogs. These highly trained K9 units possess an extraordinary ability to detect the unique scent signatures associated with human decomposition, even when remains are deeply buried or have been subjected to efforts to conceal them. The dogs were brought to the Osborne property to conduct a thorough sweep of the outdoor areas, particularly focusing on locations where Jerry had conducted his extensive backyard burns. The results of their deployment were significant. The cadaver dogs alerted to possible human remains near an outdoor burn barrel. An alert by a cadaver dog is a strong indication that the specific scent of human remains is present, signaling a high probability that a body, or parts thereof, had been in that location. This particular burn barrel had been identified by neighbors as the source of the large fires and foul odors they had observed. The dog's reaction at this specific spot provided a powerful corroboration to the neighbors' anecdotal observations and Jerry's suspicious burning activities. It directly linked his efforts to dispose of materials with the potential presence of human remains, aligning with the theory of foul play. However, despite the strong alert from the cadaver dogs, the physical search that followed yielded a challenging outcome. No remains were immediately recovered from the burn barrel or the surrounding area. This outcome, while initially frustrating, did not negate the dog's alerts. The intensity of the fires Jerry had lit could have reduced any remains to fragments too small to be readily identifiable, or scattered them beyond easy recovery. Alternatively, what the dogs detected could have been residual scent from remains that were subsequently moved elsewhere. Regardless of the exact reason for the lack of immediate physical recovery, the cadaver dog alerts served as compelling circumstantial evidence, strongly suggesting that human remains had been present at that specific location. It further solidified the belief that Jerry's extensive burning was part of a deliberate effort to dispose of evidence, specifically the bodies of Susan and Evan, reinforcing the grave suspicions surrounding him. The combination of deleted security footage, replaced cameras, and cadaver dog alerts created an increasingly strong foundation for the ongoing criminal investigation. As the forensic and digital evidence continued to mount against Jerry Osborne, suggesting a cover-up of a violent act, the investigation pivoted to uncover the potential motive behind such a heinous crime. This led detectives to explore the hidden dynamics of the Osbornes' marriage, revealing a secret life that, once exposed, provided a chilling explanation for Susan's growing fear and ultimate disappearance. This segment delves into the explosive truth that Susan uncovered, her subsequent emotional state, and Jerry's escalating controlling behavior. The core of the motive lay in a shocking revelation. Susan uncovered Jerry's past and possible ongoing work as a male escort. This was not a vague suspicion or a rumor. It was a deeply personal and professionally compromising secret that shattered the foundation of their marriage. Susan's discovery was likely made through meticulous, personal investigation, perhaps stumbling upon digital breadcrumbs Jerry had inadvertently left behind. This could have been an old email, a discreet online profile left active, or even financial transactions that pointed to a life he desperately tried to keep hidden. The realization that her husband, an Air Force veteran, had a clandestine life as a male escort would have been a profound betrayal, fundamentally altering her perception of their relationship and his character. This secret life introduced a dangerous element of deception and potential risk into their seemingly stable home, creating an immediate and irreconcilable conflict within their marriage. The evidence of Jerry's secret life was irrefutable, and Susan meticulously documented it. She sent screenshots to her close friend Holly, providing concrete proof of her discovery. These screenshots likely included details from online profiles, suggestive messages, or booking information that definitively linked Jerry to his escort activities. Crucially, Susan was able to identify Jerry via distinct tattoos and a phone number visible in these online materials. These unique identifiers, specific tattoos on his body or a phone number listed on a profile, served as undeniable confirmation that the man operating as a male escort was indeed her husband, Jerry Osborne. This direct link through verifiable physical and digital details solidified the truth of her terrifying discovery, leaving no room for doubt or denial. This act of sharing the evidence with Holly underscored the gravity of her find and her need for a confidant, unknowingly creating a vital trail for investigators later. Following this explosive revelation, Susan's emotional state underwent a dramatic and concerning shift. She became profoundly fearful and paranoid. The realization that her husband was leading a double life, potentially engaging in risky behaviors and betraying her trust in such a fundamental way, instilled a deep sense of insecurity and danger. This fear was not irrational. It was rooted in the understanding that Jerry was capable of profound deception, and that his secret life could carry unforeseen consequences. perhaps even threats from external parties associated with his escort work. Her paranoia manifested as a constant state of vigilance, a feeling of being watched or monitored, and a deep distrust of her own home, which had now been tainted by her husband's hidden activities. She might have changed her routines, become more withdrawn, or expressed fears for her safety and that of her son, Evan. This profound emotional distress and heightened state of fear provided a critical insight into her mindset in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. It established a clear and compelling motive for a potential confrontation and Jerry's subsequent actions. In response to Susan's discovery and her escalating fear, Jerry's behavior became increasingly controlling, serving to deepen her isolation and vulnerability. He grew profoundly controlling over Susan, attempting to manage her interactions and access to information. This control manifested in several key ways. He began monitoring her phone conversations, listening in on her calls, or scrutinizing her call logs and text messages. This invasive surveillance was an attempt to ascertain how much she knew, who she was speaking to, and whether she was sharing his secret with others. He sought to cut off her lines of communication, particularly with her friend Holly, who was privy to the damning evidence. Furthermore, Jerry began to dictate her behavior, attempting to control her movements, her social interactions, and her access to financial resources. He might have imposed strict curfews, questioned her whereabouts incessantly, or restricted her ability to leave the house independently. This increasing control was a desperate attempt to contain the damage from his exposed secret and to prevent Susan from taking any action that could further compromise him, such as leaving him or exposing his activities publicly. This controlling behavior, combined with Susan's fear and the weight of his exposed secret, created an extremely volatile and dangerous environment within the Holtville home, setting the stage for a confrontation with tragic consequences. With Susan Osborne's devastating discovery of Jerry's secret life as a male escort, and her subsequent fear and Jerry's controlling behavior, the pieces of the puzzle began to align for law enforcement. The forensic evidence, the suspicious cleanup efforts, Jerry's inconsistent narrative, and now a compelling motive all pointed unequivocally in one direction. The investigation had moved past mere suspicion. It had identified a clear and singular focus. Based on the overwhelming and accumulating circumstantial and forensic evidence, the police adopted a firm stance. Jerry Osborne was labeled the sole person of interest in the disappearance of Susan and Evan. This designation was not made lightly. It was a direct consequence of the inconsistencies in his story regarding their departure. His failure to report them missing for an extended period, the suspicious and extensive renovations to the home, the unsettling backyard burns, the deliberate deletion of security camera footage, the replacement of those cameras, and the alarming alerts from the cadaver dogs. Each piece of evidence, when viewed individually, might have raised questions, but when considered collectively, they formed an irrefutable pattern of a perpetrator attempting to conceal a crime. This official designation meant that all investigative resources and efforts would now be primarily directed towards him, scrutinizing his every move and past action for further clues. He was no longer just a concerned husband, but the central figure in a potential double murder investigation. In response to this intense scrutiny, Jerry's conduct became one of uncooperativeness and stonewalling. Jerry's denial of any wrongdoing was resolute, yet his actions spoke louder than his words. He did not cooperate with the media, refusing interviews or public statements, despite the widespread attention the missing mother and son case garnered. This silence, while legally advisable in many situations, struck many as cold and unfeeling for someone whose wife and stepson were missing. His communication was strictly controlled. He only spoke through his lawyer, a clear indication of his legal strategy to limit his exposure and potential self-incrimination. This lack of transparency, coupled with his persistent denial, further fueled public and investigative suspicion. His refusal to engage with the media or provide any comforting narrative to the distraught community only hardened the perception that he had something significant to hide, rather than genuinely seeking the return of his family. Even as Jerry maintained his silence, the methodical work of the investigation continued, pushing forward on all fronts to gather the irrefutable evidence needed for a prosecution. This involved crucial evidence in progress that would later form the backbone of the legal case. The blood samples from the home, which had been initially detected by luminol testing and meticulously collected by forensic teams, were sent for DNA testing. This was a critical step, as DNA analysis would definitively determine if the blood belonged to Susan, Evan, or another individual, providing concrete proof of violence and potentially linking it directly to the victims. The results of these tests, pending at the time of the unfolding investigation, were eagerly awaited as they held the power to transform circumstantial evidence into definitive proof of homicide. Alongside the forensic work, investigators delved into Jerry's digital world. The sheriff referenced suspicious deleted data from his computer records, indicating that electronic devices owned or used by Jerry had been analyzed. While the specific nature of this deleted data was not publicly disclosed, its mention by the sheriff suggested that patterns of internet searches, communications, or other digital activities had been deliberately erased, mirroring the deleted security footage and pointing towards a conscious effort to remove incriminating information. This continuous collection and analysis of both physical and digital evidence underscored the meticulous nature of the police work and their determination to build an airtight case against the person of interest. As the investigation pressed on, the public narrative of the case was dominated by the profound family despair and a desperate call for tips. The human cost of the disappearance was immeasurable, profoundly affecting those closest to Susan and Evan. Susan's mother and best friend emerged as powerful voices, openly expressing their anguish and their unwavering conviction that foul play had occurred. Their interviews with media outlets were filled with raw emotion, conveying their despair and frustration with Jerry's lack of cooperation and the continued absence of their loved ones. They recounted Susan's fears after discovering Jerry's secret life, lending credibility to the motive theory and deepening the public's understanding of the tragic circumstances. Their grief was palpable, transforming the abstract concept of a missing persons case into a deeply personal tragedy for the community. In their desperation for answers, they spearheaded a widespread outreach campaign, making heartfelt pleas for witnesses, urging anyone with even the slightest piece of information to contact authorities. Flyers were distributed, social media campaigns launched, and public appeals made, all aimed at generating leads. They provided contact information for law enforcement, emphasizing that even seemingly insignificant details could prove crucial to breaking the case open. The family's persistent efforts to keep the case in the public eye, their unwavering belief in foul play, and their desperate pleas for help served as a powerful counterpoint to Jerry's silence and denial, underscoring the deep void left by Susan and Evan's unexplained vanishing. Their unwavering resolve became a beacon of hope for justice in the face of such profound uncertainty and loss.